Some people speak to be seen. Some people act to be praised. Some people live for approval they never truly feel. But INFJs often don't. They don't chase applause. They don't crave constant reassurance. And they don't measure their worth by how loudly the world responds. This confuses people. Because in a culture obsessed with validation, likes, comments, approval, recognition, INFJs seem to move quietly, almost untouched. So today we ask a deeper question. Why don't INFJs seek validation? And what do they know about self-worth that others are still searching for? It's about something much deeper. The INFJ personality type is often described as introspective, intuitive, and deeply principled. But one of the most misunderstood INFJ traits is this. They don't seek validation the way most people do. This doesn't mean INFJs don't feel pain. It doesn't mean they don't care. And it certainly doesn't mean they're immune to doubt. It means their sense of worth comes from a different place. While many people look outward to answer the question, am I enough? INFJs instinctively look inward. And in a validation-driven world, that inner orientation feels rare. And sometimes unsettling. 1. INFJs validate themselves internally. One of the core reasons INFJs don't seek validation is simple, but profound. Their internal compass is stronger than external approval. INFJs are guided by deeply held values. Not trends. Not popularity. Not applause. They ask questions like, does this align with who I am? Is this meaningful? Is this true to my values? If the answer is yes, outside validation becomes optional. This doesn't mean INFJs think they're always right. It means they trust their internal sense of alignment more than fleeting opinions. And once someone learns to trust that inner voice, external validation loses its grip. 2. INFJs understand that validation is temporary. INFJs are intuitive pattern recognizers. They see cycles. Praise that fades. Approval that shifts. Love that becomes conditional. They understand something many people learn the hard way. Validation is unstable. What's praised today may be criticized tomorrow. What's celebrated now may be forgotten later. INFJs don't reject validation out of pride. They simply don't build their identity on something so unreliable. Instead, they anchor their worth in integrity, purpose, consistency. Because those things remain when applause disappears. 3. INFJs are deeply aware of motives. INFJs don't just notice what people say. They notice why people say it. They can sense when validation is performative, manipulative, transactional. And because of this awareness, INFJs become cautious. They don't want praise that comes with strings. They don't want approval that demands self-betrayal. They don't want recognition that costs authenticity. So they quietly step away from validation-based dynamics. Not because they feel superior, but because they feel protective of their inner truth. 4. INFJs don't want to be defined by others. To seek validation is, in some way, to allow others to define you. INFJs resist this instinctively. They know that people project, people misunderstand, people interpret through their own wounds. INFJs don't want their identity shaped by someone else's expectations. So instead of asking, do you approve of me? They ask, am I living honestly? That shift changes everything. 5. INFJs value meaning over recognition. Recognition feels good, but meaning feels right. INFJs prioritize meaning. They would rather do something quietly meaningful than loudly impressive. They would rather help without credit than perform for applause. This is why INFJs are often found behind the scenes, in unseen roles, working without recognition, not because they lack ambition, but because their ambition is internal, not performative. 6. INFJs feel validation deeply, but briefly. Here's a subtle truth many people miss. INFJs do feel validation, but it doesn't linger. Praise doesn't inflate them. Criticism doesn't define them. Validation passes through, not into, their identity. Why? Because INFJs already know who they are trying to be. And no amount of praise can replace that clarity. 7. INFJs have a private relationship with themselves. INFJs spend a lot of time alone, not physically, but internally. They reflect. They question. They refine. This inner dialogue becomes more important than external feedback. They don't need constant reassurance because they are constantly self-evaluating. Not harshly, not cruelly, but honestly. And that honesty becomes grounding. 8. INFJs fear losing themselves more than losing approval. For INFJs, the greatest loss is not rejection. It's self-betrayal. They fear compromising values, diluting truth, becoming who they are expected to be instead of who they are. Validation often comes with pressure. INFJs choose inner peace over outer praise. Every time. 9. INFJs have seen the cost of validation seeking. INFJs are observant. They watch others chase approval, burn out, lose themselves. They see how validation can become an addiction. And quietly, they decide, that path is not for me. Not with judgment, with understanding. 10. INFJs seek alignment, not agreement. Agreement feels nice. Alignment feels essential. INFJs don't need everyone to agree with them. They need to feel aligned with their purpose. That's why disagreement doesn't shake them as much as it does others. They're not here to be liked. They're here to be real. 11. INFJs learn early that validation can be conditional. Many INFJs learn something very early in life, often without anyone ever saying it out loud. That love, attention, and approval can be conditional. They notice patterns. Praise comes when they behave a certain way. Affection fades when they express inconvenient truths. Acceptance depends on emotional caretaking. So INFJs adapt. Not by demanding more validation, but by withdrawing their dependence on it. They begin to rely on something safer. Their inner world. Instead of asking, do they approve of me? They ask, can I live with myself? This quiet shift often happens long before adulthood. 12. INFJs become their own emotional witnesses. Many people seek validation because they want to be seen. INFJs learn to see themselves. They witness their own pain, their own intentions, their own growth. They develop an internal observer that says, I know what I meant. I know why I did this. I know who I'm becoming. When you feel truly seen, internally, you stop begging to be seen externally. This doesn't make INFJs emotionally detached. It makes them emotionally grounded. 13. INFJs don't trust loud confirmation. INFJs are sensitive to emotional noise. They can sense when praise is exaggerated, when compliments are rushed, when validation is used to influence or control. Because of this, loud approval feels suspicious. Quiet consistency feels safer. INFJs would rather have one sincere acknowledgement than 100 shallow affirmations. They don't need to be constantly told they're enough. They need to feel aligned. 14. INFJs feel responsibility, not entitlement. INFJs don't believe validation is something they are owed. They don't expect praise for simply existing. Instead, they carry a strong sense of responsibility. To act ethically, to grow inwardly, to contribute meaningfully. They see worth as something expressed through integrity, not rewarded through applause. So when validation doesn't come, they don't collapse. They simply continue. 15. INFJs don't want to be motivated by applause. Validation can change motivation. When people become praise-driven, they begin to perform instead of express, please instead of align, chase reactions instead of meaning. INFJs sense this danger intuitively. They protect their motivation fiercely. They want to act because something is true, not because it will be rewarded. Once motivation becomes internal, external validation becomes irrelevant. 16. INFJs understand the difference between being liked and being respected. INFJs don't confuse likability with depth. They know being liked can require self-editing. Being respected requires self-honesty. They choose honesty, even when it costs approval. This is why INFJs may appear reserved, selective, or distant. They are not trying to impress. They are trying to remain intact. 17. INFJs experience validation as overstimulation. Too much attention overwhelms INFJs. Too much praise can feel invasive. Too much recognition can feel exposing. INFJs prefer subtle acknowledgement. Validation, when excessive, pulls them outward, away from the inner clarity they depend on. So they naturally limit how much they seek it. Peace matters more than praise. 18. INFJs have a long-term view of identity. INFJs don't ask, "Do people approve of me right now?" They ask, "Will I respect myself years from now?" They think in timelines, in patterns, in long arcs of meaning. Short-term validation rarely fits into that vision. So they let it go. 19. INFJs don't need to prove what they already know. INFJs spend years quietly refining their identity. They question themselves deeply. They confront their flaws. They adjust their values. By the time they reach clarity, they don't need confirmation. They're not trying to prove who they are. They're trying to live it. 20. INFJs are often misunderstood, and they accept that. Many INFJs reach a quiet realization. Not everyone will understand them. Not everyone will see the layers, the symbolism in their words, the depth behind their silence. For years, some INFJs try to explain themselves. They overclarify. They overshare. They try to translate their inner world into simpler language. But eventually, something shifts. They notice the exhaustion. Trying to be understood by everyone is a battle with no finish line. So they let go. Not with bitterness. Not with arrogance. With calm acceptance. They understand that resonance is rare. And rare things are not meant for crowds. Instead of chasing universal approval, they choose selective connection. A few people who truly see them. A few conversations that feel effortless. A few relationships that do not require performance. They stop shrinking to fit. They stop stretching to impress. They choose resonance over recognition. And that feels lighter. 21. INFJs feel safer in self-trust than social approval. Validation depends on others. It changes with moods, with trends, with opinions. One day you are praised. The next day you are questioned. INFJs notice this instability early. They see how fragile public opinion can be. How quickly admiration turns into criticism. So they turn inward. Self-trust feels different. It is built slowly, through reflection, through mistakes owned and corrected, through promises kept to themselves. INFJs trust their intentions. They ask, "Was my motive honest? Was my action aligned with my values?" They trust their conscience. Even when it costs them popularity. They trust their capacity for reflection. They know they will examine themselves honestly. They will grow. They will adjust if necessary. Validation becomes optional. Approval becomes a bonus, not a foundation. Reassurance answers fear. Am I good enough? Do you still like me? Did I do okay? Depth answers meaning. Why does this matter? What is the lesson here? How does this change us? INFJs are meaning-oriented. They are less interested in surface comfort, and more interested in internal alignment. They want conversations that stretch the mind, that explore motives, that unpack patterns. They want connections that transform both people, not just entertain them. They want choices that align with their inner compass, not choices that simply avoid criticism. Validation does not offer depth. It is quick, short-lived, external. So they look elsewhere. They look for insight, for growth, for emotional honesty. They would rather hear a hard truth than receive empty praise. 23. INFJs don't confuse silence with low self-worth. Quiet does not mean insecure. Silence does not mean unsure. INFJs can sit in silence comfortably. In a group, in a meeting, in a conversation. They do not feel pressure to fill every pause. Because they are not waiting for approval. They are listening inwardly. They are asking, "Is this worth saying? Will this add value? Is this aligned with what I believe?" Their stillness is not emptiness. It is fullness. Full of observation. Full of processing. Full of awareness. They do not speak to be noticed. They speak when it matters. And that restraint often looks mysterious to others. But for the INFJ, it is simply natural. 24. INFJs don't need the crowd to agree. INFJs can stand alone in a room of disagreement. Not loudly. Not aggressively. Quietly. They do not enjoy isolation. They do not seek conflict. But they value truth more than comfort. If something feels wrong internally, they cannot pretend it feels right, even if everyone else agrees. They can tolerate disapproval. They can handle being misunderstood. Because their anchor is internal, they ask themselves, am I aligned with my values? Am I acting with integrity? If the answer is yes, they remain steady. This emotional independence reduces the need for validation. Agreement becomes pleasant, but not required. 25. INFJs know that real worth is lived, not announced. INFJs rarely announce their value. They do not need to declare it. They prefer to embody it. Through consistency, showing up when they say they will, keeping promises, following through quietly, through compassion, listening deeply, responding thoughtfully, caring without spectacle, through integrity, doing the right thing, even when unnoticed, even when inconvenient. They do not need the world to clap. Applause fades quickly. They need something more stable. They need to sleep at night with a clear conscience. INFJs do not avoid validation because they do not feel. They avoid it because they feel deeply. They know approval is fleeting, dependent on circumstance. They know identity is sacred, not something to trade for temporary acceptance. They know peace comes from within. In a world constantly asking, do they like me? INFJs quietly ask, am I aligned with myself? And that question changes everything. It shifts the focus inward, from performance to authenticity, from applause to alignment. They know approval fades. That admiration shifts. That praise cannot replace integrity. So they choose something quieter, something steadier, something rooted. And in doing so, they discover a form of self-worth that does not need permission. A self-worth that remains, even in silence, even in disagreement, even when misunderstood.